Welcome to the St. Louis Span Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Candy. I have with me here today Anna Ortiz-Aragon, owner of Declutter with Anna, and we're going to be talking about how your environment affects both your health from a physical perspective as well as from a mental perspective, that it affects your health all the way around. And we've all been spending a lot more time this year at home and in our environments. And with the holidays, we may even be inviting some close family members. Probably not the big holiday gatherings that we're all used to, but if you'd like your home to be a better environment just for you or for anyone else, she's going to give us some great tips today. So Anna, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Dave. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So can you tell me, one, just what made you want to get into this space? And I know you started out in personal organizing, and then recently you've shifted a little bit more to the mindset and the psychology behind why people, acquire cluttered homes in the first place. So
Exactly.
can you tell us how you got into the first business?
Yes. So, decluttering actually saved my life. Like, I was a single mom and I moved to St. Louis. I'm from San Francisco originally. So I had no family to help me. It was like me and my baby against the world. And I think that's when we met, when I was networking. I brought my baby everywhere. And I just knew that I had to make my life as easy as possible. And, having a lot of clutter and wanting to clean and only having one arm, you're trying to cook, you're trying to get places in and out of the house. You just cannot do that with a bunch of clutter on your mind and in your space. And also my dad is a minimalist. He's like a real minimalist. And he left Peru. I'm Peruvian at 16 years old and traveled the world. And he was just always super intentional about his belongings. And I just really picked that up. He's like, okay, this is my favorite coffee mug. These are my favorite pens. This is my favorite notebook. And he was just always sharp like that. And I think it just rubbed off on me. And I swear it just gives you so much peace and freedom and space to think about what you actually want to do, that I wanted to share that with others.
Oh, wonderful. And when you're cluttered around in your physical space, it does give you a lot less headspace, kind of trying to attend to all those different things, all the different distractions around you. Now, I understand you said you've kind of shifted a little bit more into helping people understand why they tend to declutter or why they tend to clutter in the first place, and get some mindset help for how to fix that. What are the common issues that you see that cause people to acquire clutter in the first place?
Yes. Yes. So it often stems from childhood. It's like, how did your parents or your caregivers take care of their space? Did they take care of their space, or did they neglect their surroundings? It's also, I believe, a scarcity mindset at the end of the day. It's like you're either holding on to things of the past, or you're holding on just in case for the future. And essentially, you're not living in the present and thinking that you're going to need all these things at one point or another. And really, humans evolve and grow all the time. We are cyclical beings. We're always, evolving and moving, and our surroundings should reflect that. It shouldn't be exactly the same way as when you moved in, or the same house when you were a child. We grow, we learn different things, we have new interests, our kids get older, and so we should constantly be cycling these things out and living how we truly want to be today.
And that brings us a lot into kind of the pain aspect of things too, that a lot of people that I see with chronic pain, or that are anxious or depressed, are basically living outside of the current moment a good
Yes.
portion of the time. That depression is spending too much time reflecting back on things that have happened. Anxiety, spending too much time thinking about things that might happen, when in reality probably 99% of them never actually do. But you can lose just so much cognitive space worrying about all those potential things that you have no control over, that right now is the only moment that you can control. So how do you go about approaching someone who may have grown up in the Depression era or had parents who grew up in the Depression era, and you know that was a time when the scarcity mindset was huge. How do you help
Yeah.
them overcome those kind of firmly set beliefs that they had from way back in childhood?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we talk about it. You know, I will ask some questions, and it's so funny because whenever I did a home tour, so I was doing this a lot before Corona, obviously. Now it's different, but I would go and do a home tour, and basically it was the women, basically moms, who were calling me, and they would just overflow with. They would just tell me. It was like I barely even had to ask questions, and they were say, "Hey, you know, this is what my mom used to do. This is what my grandma used to do. I have so much stuff that isn't even mine, stuff that's broken that we're never actually going to fix." And so what I do is help them identify that, like just awareness, noticing what's going on. And I think just having me present in their space is like I'm showing them the mirror. Like we're looking at all the skeletons in your closet, and they often apologize. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm sure this is the worst house you've ever seen." You know, like just they're just so deeply like embarrassed and like humiliated, you know. And so what we do is talk about it, and then we envision what they want their life to truly look like. You know, how do you actually move through your space? What would you rather spend your time doing instead of worrying about the laundry or the dishes or your kids' toys or the paperwork or your digital clutter? Like, what would you do if all of that energy was freed up for you? So kind of giving them another vision for the future. And then action steps. And we're like, okay, so what is the most annoying part of your space? Like, let's tackle that one first because it's taking up the most mental, the mental space. And then we kind of move down the list. And I often do it together with them. Now I'm doing it more virtually and coaching people through it, which I think is actually better because if I'm there doing it with you, you might not keep it that way. It's like you got to do the heavy lifting. You need to go through all of your clothes, decide if you actually love them. Does this really inspire me, make me feel confident and excited? Or is it, stuff that shames me? Like maybe, yeah, okay, so there's a direct correlation between clutter and weight, actually. And a lot of weight loss groups will incorporate decluttering your space as part of the program, which I think is brilliant. And it's like you're losing weight in more than one way. And if you're keeping all of your like teenage clothes, your college clothes, your pre-baby clothes or whatever, it's basically like shouting at you from the closet, and it's like, hey, let's just accept what is. We can definitely improve our fitness and diet, but you don't want that, like that really loud signal, that visual example of like what you used to be and feeling that you're just constantly behind. So basically what I'm trying to do is like remove these avalanches, remove these like doubts, remove the guilt, remove the shame out of your house so that you can focus on moving forward.
You brought up a lot of great points there. And yeah, I think probably the biggest thing that I picked up on was just the belief that, I'm not enough or like I'm not good enough or, I must be the worst case that you've ever seen, kind of that catastrophizing mindset, kind of feeling like no one else can possibly be going through this. And, how do you help people change from that? Because that's got to be a very like kind of deep set.
It's so deep. Yeah. And, it's often, clutter is a metaphor. That's what I tell people, like a disorganized home is a disorganized mind. So you're probably also not very productive. You're probably also not very confident. You're probably also not very efficient with your diet and exercise routine or pain management. You're probably not very aware of your body. You're probably not very aware of the people that you allow into your life. The things that you consume, the TV that you watch, the radio that you listen to, the social media that you scroll through, you're just consuming for the sake of consuming, which is like we live in America. And so there's so much money pumped into consumerism that it's like, give yourself a break. Okay. Like, look at all the commercials, look at all the advertising. Like, they really want us to be consumers, like all the sales, all the dollar stores, like there's a lot of money pumped into you being a consumer. And so really it's like awareness and being like, hey, like, I am more than worthy of everything on my own. I don't need all these things, and I don't need to be sucked into that trap anymore. And I can choose what I allow into my space. I can surround myself with only my favorite items. And if I need something, if I truly need something at the end of the day, I'm capable and resourceful that I can go get it when I need it.
Right. Yeah. And, we probably spend so much money on things that we probably really don't need, that if we just save that somewhere and then set it aside for a time when there was something that we actually did need and didn't have, we'd have a little bit available.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned your dad. I think the word you used was intentional about his possessions. And how do you help someone get started on getting that intentionality into their life? For someone who, maybe this would be hard for them. What's a good first step?
Yes. A good first step is removing the obvious. What are the obvious no's? So we don't want to ask the hard questions immediately. Like, we're not going to your photos immediately. We're going to go for like the trash, the broken stuff, the gifts that you were given that never really spoke to you, the stuff in your closet that you haven't looked at in years, the boxes in your basement that you've never even opened. Like, those things are obviously not a part of your everyday life. So we're going to start with the obvious. And then I recommend everybody have like, a trash bag, a recycling bag, a donation bag while you're doing it. Like, choose one box, choose one drawer, choose one closet, and you're literally like, okay, that's an easy no. That's an easy no, and then just like separating them, bagging them up, preparing them to be dropped off or taken out to the trash and recycling. Like, the sooner that you remove these things, the more relief you're gonna feel. So what you don't want to do is like pack up all these bags and then put all the bags in the basement. And then it's like, no, like, finish it, like, take it out, take it to Goodwill, take it to Salvation Army, your favorite local nonprofit. And I think when we start with what we don't want, it's easier to identify what we do want.
Yeah. Baby steps, like anything.
Yeah.
Now, if someone knows that they have this issue and they need to declutter, but they're a little bit anxious to reach out to like you or someone else that does something in your space in their area, how do you help them get over that fear of being judged or that shame feeling that you mentioned before? What would you say to someone who's worried about contacting someone?
Absolutely. I would say that your clarity is more important than your fears. And we as organizers are basically social workers. Like, I'm a former classroom teacher. I used to work in juvenile detention. I have a lot of social work experience. I used to work with foster kids, kids in group homes, kids, in and out of juvie, and then actually in juvie, and like murderers and like rapists. And I'm like, hey, you guys are people. I love you, and we're going to get through this. So when people are so ashamed of their space, I just remind them of the culture that we live in. Like, hey, this is not entirely your fault. Like, there's so much money pumped into creating this world, right? Also, your childhood, like, you were an innocent child and you were raised by a family who had their own set of ideas and programs and habits and routines. And then also recognizing that, hey, if you're thinking about changing, that is a really powerful step. If you're even thinking about reaching out to someone and you have identified that you have a problem, like, you're already halfway there. It's just awareness, So I would say, take a deep breath. There are some books you can watch. There's some Netflix shows out there. There's some podcasts. And also, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I have created like online courses and ebooks for the people that are so ashamed, or they don't want anyone in their space, that they can kind of DIY, do it on your own. Because it is intense to have a stranger in your house and to see all the skeletons in your closet, to see how you're really living. It is pretty intense. It definitely takes some courage. But just know, if you're already thinking about it and you've identified like, hey, this is something I need to handle, then you are like halfway there.
So you mentioned your ebooks and podcasts, and you actually have a podcast too, don't you?
I do, yes. My podcast is Declutter Your Life, and I interview basically my favorite healers. Like, you and I are going to do an episode together, but just, decluttering your entire life, like your body, your diet, your mentality, your, belief systems, like all of that is clutter is a metaphor, and so I just want to help my folks in any way that they need.
Oh, outstanding. And you're right. It's a metaphor for so many things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People in pain, they struggle with feeling like it's their fault or they did something wrong, but they have no clue what they did. And it's not going backwards, but just kind of moving forward to what do you want your life to look like?
Yep.
So for someone who would like to declutter their space, physically as well as mentally, and might want to reach out to you, one, how would they get in one of those ebooks that you mentioned, and how would they contact you directly?
Yes. So my website is Declutter with Anna. I am Declutter with Anna on all socials, and I also have a Facebook group. So go to my website. I have a ton of like free information there. I've got a free online course. I've got some ebooks. I have some videos, some virtual summits with like other business owners I've worked with. And then I also have my services, which is in-person, virtual organizing. I also have my new mindset program and a group program as well. I'm realizing that, let's just get to the root cause, which are mental and emotional blockages. So before we even touch your space, like, let's talk about it. Let's like identify these issues and really move that energy first. So then you can like have a sustainable, beautiful space, a really restorative space for you.
Well, that's awesome that you address the root cause, because you're right. You throw the stuff away and you don't fix the mindset issue, and eventually you just acquire more stuff. Yep. America is not going to stop showing you ads of consumerism. So
exactly.
Being able to make that mindset shift is amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time to be on the show with us today, Anna. We'll put all those links that you mentioned in the show notes. And for anyone listening, if you enjoyed what you heard today and you'd like to get more information like this, we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, your favorite podcast catcher, or we're also going to be on YouTube starting pretty soon here. So thank you for all for joining us today. And thank you, Anna, for being here, and have a great day.
Thank you, Dave. This was amazing. Thanks so much.